Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high-achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson, and if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. I want to talk to you about the three biggest things that you are doing that are keeping you in the pattern, the cycle of attracting emotionally unavailable partners, narcissistic partners, men who can't give you what you need, even trapped in the cycle of, I'm too scared to date again because I don't trust myself and I'm afraid that I'm going to meet the same type of person. The caveat that I want to say here is that, and this might ruffle your tail feathers a little bit, it's never about the quality of men available in your area. It is never about you were raised by narcissistic parents or you had narcissistic siblings. I spoke to someone recently who this as a reason why she couldn't get from point A to point B. It's never your age. It's never the amount of baggage you have, perceived or otherwise. It's none of those things. The biggest thing that is holding you back from the life and the quality, the type of relationship that you want is you, plain and simple. And when I was first on my healing journey, I had a very talented therapist tell me this, and I was super pissed off for a while. I was really triggered. But I think the faster and the quicker you can understand the ways that you are blocking yourself and holding yourself back and perpetuating your own cycle of emotional unavailability, that hopefully the faster you can begin to take action and change. So without any further hesitation, and also if you watch this on replay, let me know, hit hashtag replay in the comments, ask me any questions. If you watch this or catch this as I'm going live, feel free to drop the questions in the comment box. And I'm also going to say there's a gigantic thunderstorm right outside my window. So hopefully we have power and nothing crazy happens. We're in storm season or rainy season here in Florida. So the first and the biggest reason that you are, despite your best efforts, despite all the therapy you've done, despite all the work that you've done on yourself, still meeting emotionally unavailable men or finding yourself in situations that aren't meeting your needs when you really truly just want a really nice, healthy relationship, is that you're staying too busy. You're staying too busy. You might be diving headlong into your career. You might be packing your schedule with lots of extracurricular activities, maybe for your kids, maybe for your self-development, personal development, your healing, whatever the case may be. You might be binge watching YouTube videos at night on narcissistic abuse and overcoming it and attracting a healthy lover. You might be reading a bunch of books on self-help and self-improvement. You might not find yourself with a day that goes by where you have a spaciousness that you don't somehow automatically fill with stuff. So you are staying too busy, and not that this is just from the obvious. If you're staying too busy, then would you really even have time to date or find a relationship? It's not just from that kind of obvious, okay, well, that makes sense. The reason you're staying busy 90% of the time, plus if you have a history of narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, some type of complex trauma in your background, is a trauma response. It's a trauma response. It is your way of avoiding. It's your way of avoiding feeling empty. It's your way of avoiding feeling lonely. It's your way of avoiding feeling unworthy. Usually when people have some kind of painful experience early on in childhood or repeated painful experiences in intimate interpersonal relationships where, man, are you ever vulnerable when you're sharing your full self with someone? you develop what's called complex trauma. And when you have complex trauma, meaning repeated exposure to unhealthy events, traumatic events, psychological abuse, manipulation, even physical, financial, or sexual abuse, you take on a subconscious meaning about yourself. And the subconscious meaning is below your waking awareness. And usually that subconscious meaning is something along the lines of, I'm not worthy. I'm different. There's something wrong with me. I'm defective. I'm damaged goods. You won't wake up in the morning thinking this. You are going to compensate and try to outrun and avoid your past or whatever it was that hurt you in the past by overworking, by staying super busy, by drowning yourself in busy work. Because in a way, this is probably staying busy or overperforming or overachieving might have been a way that you cope in a toxic relationship or in a toxic childhood. You might have tried to get your validation and affirmation that you were a good person by how much you did, how much you worked, how much you achieved. And this becomes a big problem when we're talking about attracting a healthy relationship because number one, you are living by a trauma response. When you undergo repeated exposure, like narcissistic abuse, I'll use that as an example because most of my clients, myself included, that was the past. When you undergo narcissistic abuse, you develop the behavior to walk on eggshells, meaning you're hyper vigilant when you're in that relationship. You are looking to modify your behavior so you don't create an episode or you don't create an argument or a rageful fight. And when you're out here, you are looking for perceived threats. And that changes your brain chemistry, right? That changes the way that you move through the world long after you leave that relationship. You will still likely feel anxious. You'll still likely feel a little on edge. You'll definitely feel lonely. You'll feel empty. You'll feel sad. You'll feel confused about how to start over. And in order to avoid all of that, you're going to try to outrun it or overwork it. And when you stay super busy and you're not facing in a safe way that doesn't overwhelm you, your feelings that you've repressed, you're emotionally unavailable. You're emotionally unavailable. And when you're emotionally unavailable and deep down subconsciously not feeling worthy or not feeling like you deserve someone, that's what you're going to attract into your life because you attract what you are, not what you want. You may have worked yourself to the bone and achieved a lot of success in your business or in your career. You may have built yourself up to a certain level and used your past traumatic experience to fuel your motivation and your drive. But what usually happens is that around age 40, 50, even 60, that starts to crumble, especially in the sense of interpersonal relationships, intimate relationships, because this thing that you've been running from, your past hurt, your past painful experiences, doesn't go away the busier you stay, the harder you work. It's still sitting there as a negative subconscious belief in your subconscious programming that's going to cause you to attract someone who is a match for that subconscious belief. And so the more you stay busy, the more you avoid your feeling, you are essentially emotionally unavailable. And more emotionally unavailable partners you will get. And when you have a subconscious belief, subconscious, meaning it's not, you don't wake up in the morning and brushing your teeth and look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm a piece of shit or I'm unworthy. You're likely working your you know what off to prove yourself worthy. But when you have the subconscious belief system of I'm defective, I'm damaged goods, something's wrong with me, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how many videos like this you watch. It doesn't matter how many books you read. It doesn't matter how many years you stay in therapy and talk about what your dad did to you or what your mom did to you, what your sister did to you, what your exes did to you. It does not matter. If you have that subconscious belief, you are going to unconsciously actually seek out situations, intimate partners, job situations, coworkers, employees that are going to prove that subconscious belief to be true for you. So until you stop being busy and learn to feel your feelings, right? Learn to face your feelings, learn to release the feelings that you've repressed that are gumming up your operating system, you won't be able to change the subconscious beliefs because you're still busy running from them. And when people get busy, when people use busyness as a coping tool, their body gets used to the feeling of adrenaline. Their body gets used to the feeling of stress, constantly feeling on edge, constantly feeling two or three steps behind, overwhelmed, waking up in dread. So this becomes your body's emotional home, if you will. And until you learn to not be busy and not give yourself a guilt trip about it and learn to slow down, and most importantly, face, release, heal the repressed emotions that you have shoved out of sight, out of mind, only then will you be able to touch your subconscious beliefs. Because the more you're staying busy, essentially, the more you're living in fight or flight or survival mode. And your brain is not receptive to receiving new programming when you're living like that. And the last piece, when you're living in super busy mode and basically avoiding your feelings or trying to distract yourself, you're emotionally unavailable. And you're going to attract the same water seeks its own level. Human beings are 70+% water. You are going to attract the same level of person into your life. Will probably feel like a knight in shining armor, will probably feel amazing in the beginning because deep down you subconsciously believe you're a piece of you know what. So this person is going to feel like, oh, wow, breath of fresh air. But it will almost always evolve into whatever your pattern is: push, pull, manipulation, gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, sleeping with them too soon, then getting anxiously attached, whatever the case may be. So until you learn to slow down and stop being busy and stop hiding in busyness, you will likely continue to attract emotionally unavailable people. And the operative thing to remember here is that who you're attracting is just a reflection of you. So that's number one. The second biggest thing that you might be doing or are doing now is what I call living in someday. So I see this a lot. Living in someday means minimizing the amount of emotional pain or the amount of frustration or the amount of loneliness or the amount of emptiness that you are living with. You might be living in someday by staying busy and distracting yourself. You might living in someday might be telling yourself, one day I will book that trip to Greece, or one day I'll book that trip to Paris when I have someone to go with. One day I'll quit this job that's sucking me dry and I'll start my own business. One day I'll meet a great guy if God is ready for me to have somebody. God is not, I know I'm going to probably offend some religious people, but God is not out there. God is in here, right? God is in you. So you might be telling yourself one day when, or one day I'll do this. And this is a way to, again, avoid the truth and avoid the magnitude of where you are in your life. And this is what I call softening. This is what I call minimizing. And the funny thing is that this softening or minimizing behavior that you are likely doing right now to avoid the magnitude or the reality that you've never had a healthy relationship, that you've gotten 40 or 50 or 60 years of your life and you don't know what a healthy partner feels, is the same minimizing you use in a toxic relationship to stay in it. So, in essentially living in someday is really just a nice way of saying that you're lying to yourself. You're softening. You're not allowing yourself to fully face the reality of the situation. You might feel the reality when it's a Saturday night and you're alone again and your kids are with their dad, or you're shopping at the grocery store and you're like a cute couple and they're like in their 20s and they're super in love. And you remember when you were like that and now you're 40 something and you're like, how did I get so jaded? Or you might feel something when you get on a dating app and every guy that you seem to be attracting is just like the wrong person. And you'll tell yourself, well, screw it. Maybe I'm just supposed to be single. Maybe one day when this happens, or maybe one day I'll be ready. So living in someday is really minimizing. And if you have a pattern of ignoring red flags in relationship, if you have a pattern of stuffing yourself, if you have a pattern of losing yourself in relationship, I can almost guarantee you that you are minimizing in that relationship. And if you are minimizing there, and that's been your pattern, same pattern, different phase from relationship to relationship, from decade of your life to decade of your life, I can almost guarantee you that you're doing it right now in your own life. You are living in someday. You are cutting yourself short. I had somebody yesterday tell me, I'm lowballing myself. You are probably lowballing yourself and not living. This is a proven statistic. I think we only use 10% of our consciousness, our 10%. We have 90% left available. We're only using 10% of our potential and our consciousness every day. So I can guarantee you that if you are minimizing back here in crappy, shitty relationship, you are probably minimizing and living in someday and telling yourself one day when, or when it's this, or when it's that. And people will do that until they die. People will do that until they go to the grave. And then this is what the last wishes of the dying are. The research that shows people that are on their deathbed, they don't care about the money that they made or didn't make. They don't care about their business or whatever. The number one regret of the dying is relationships, the lack. I wish I'd spent more time with this person. I really wish I'd done that. And I can almost guarantee you, I know you've been hurt a whole lot. I know you've experienced a lot of heartache and emotional pain and betrayal, and you thought you met the one, and this person wasn't the one, and he ruined you and ruined your credit and your finances and all this kind of stuff. Even then, I can almost promise you, nobody that I ever speak to, and I've talked to hundreds of people at this point, wants to get through their life never knowing what healthy love felt like. And I know you might be thinking, I it's maybe I'm just better off being single. Maybe. I don't know. That is probably living in someday. But I know from human scientific research that we are wired for connection. We are wired for connection. So living in someday is number two way that you are keeping yourself in a pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable men. Because essentially, just like number one, which was staying busy, when you're living in someday, you are not facing your feelings. You're not facing the emotional magnitude of your choices. And when you're not fully facing your feelings, you again are essentially emotionally unavailable right when you're avoiding. And again, emotionally unavailable people attract emotionally unavailable people. Minimizing behavior, emotional unavailability. You're going to attract someone who is also emotionally unavailable. The third and final thing that is keeping you attracting the wrong type of person when deep down in your heart, no matter how much you've been burned, you really just want to find a safe, healthy relationship and experience that, because there's a part of you still in there that knows that that's possible, is you're taking either the wrong type of therapy or the wrong type of healing. And I'll talk about what that is in here in just a second, or you haven't even taken the time or the initiative to invest in any kind of healing whatsoever. You might be trying to do it yourself or dabble or read books or watch YouTube videos. And again, when you have had yourself for 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life, you're going to need and you want to get on a better part, you want to have a better life, you want to be a better version of you in your life, and you want to ultimately have a better relationship when all you've known are unavailable partners or abusive partners, you're going to need to invest in professional help. There's no way around it. I read a quote the other day that the greatest investment you can make is in yourself. And when you invest in getting the right type of professional support, which I'll talk about in a second, you, it's like the blinders can come off. You can make more money. You feel more confident. You're not living in anxiety. You're not living in dread. You're not worrying about meeting another narcissist. You are who you really are. When you were born into this life, you weren't born with all of these belief systems of I'm defective or something's wrong with me. You were born as pure loving energy. And it was through your conditioning, often in childhood, and your environment, often in childhood, and moving forward, that causes you to forget who you really are, which is pure loving energy. You come into this world as pure living energy and you leave this world going out as pure living energy. All the stuff that happens in between is, what my interpretation of the original sin, Eve eating the apple, they fall from grace, right? And they go through all this struggle. They were born into it and they go back to it. But what happens in between is a bunch of lint on on the lens of your life. And it causes you to forget who you really are, to forget your own true nature. So professional help is going to help you remember that. Now let's talk about the right kind of professional help. If you have complex trauma, and if you don't know what that is, I'll say it again. Complex trauma is any kind of emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse that you experience over a prolonged period of time in childhood or in adulthood. It could look like a turbulent childhood. You could have had a perfect childhood, but then gotten into a 25-year narcissistic abusive relationship. That's complex trauma. What most people don't, and even clinicians, licensed therapists, don't know a lot about complex trauma. But what we know in trauma research over the last 2 decades or so is that traditional talk therapy, otherwise known as cognitive behavioral therapy, does not work. In fact, it makes it worse because when you talk about the situation or you talk about the past, you relive the experience emotionally. And when you relive the experience emotionally, you light up the circuits in your brain and your body that recognize those feelings as who you are. That's just your identity. So you reinforce your conditioning by overanalyzing it. And complex trauma in and of its nature causes you to be hypervigilant. It causes some people think that they're highly sensitive, or some people, they say that they're empaths. Complex trauma will give you the same emotional sensitivity and compassion and empathy because it causes you to be on alert. It causes you to be hypervigilant, and it changes the chemistry in your brain and your body. So when you're talking about it, you are just reinforcing it, and it's proven ineffective. And just in my own experience alone in the work that I do, I talk to so many women who've spent many years in counseling, sometimes since they were teenagers, on again, off again for decades. And yet they continue to meet the most emotionally unavailable narcissistic abuser that they've ever met in their life at age 45 or 50. And it's because of this thing called complex trauma. So complex trauma is healed, and the research has been done on methodologies that work best to heal this type of trauma. And this type of trauma will cause you to develop those subconscious beliefs that hold you back, that cause you to repeat history time and time again. The methodologies that are proven effective are EMDR. However, the caveat with EMDR is that it works best on event-based trauma, a car accident, a rape, one really serious domestic violence episode that was recent. When we're talking about years or things that happened long ago in your childhood, the jury's out on how effective EMDR really is on reprogramming your brain and your body. There's mixed reviews there. So it's a little bit more complicated. It takes a little bit longer. It can be confusing. So, but it is an option, right? It is an option, especially if you maybe just exited a toxic relationship or a recent marriage and there were some really highly charged emotional events that you can't get out of your mind. EMDR would be great for those things. The second thing is somatic work. Somatic work, working with your body in the picture. The reason this is important is because when you have trauma, your brain, the fight or flight center or the amygdala in your brain gets bigger because you are looking outside of yourself for perceived threats. And this becomes like an automatic thing. You're looking at people's expressions. You're looking to read the room. What's going on in here? This is how you move through the world. When you're outwardly focused, you tend to override what's happening in here, meaning you'll feel a tightening or a contraction, or your heart closes, or your stomach tightens. You'll feel a gut signal. You'll get the gut sense, but then because you're so conditioned to focus out here, this part of your brain will be more likely to override that. And that again becomes an automatic habit. You'll also likely override it because you have a subconscious program back here that says, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable. So even though logically you might be like, this doesn't really feel right, because your brain has been changed by trauma and because you probably have a negative subconscious belief because of trauma, you're going to continue to plow forward. So using the body in the healing picture helps you to trust your own instincts. Using the body helps you to memorize new feelings, healthier feelings, and healthier subconscious beliefs that trigger healthier feelings. Because you don't feel feelings up here, you feel them in your body. Feelings produce a cascade of biochemical responses in your bloodstream. Feelings produce hormones, epigenetic signals in your bloodstream, right? And the better you feel and the more you memorize the emotional home, as I like to call it, and override your old shameful, guiltful, sad, frustrated, something's wrong with me feelings, replacing those lower level emotions and building habits of higher level emotions like joy, gratitude, abundance, excitement, optimism, enthusiasm. That is what heals a traumatic response. That's what heals a pattern. That's what causes your brain to rewire and to change. So it's so important to bring the body online. So somatic experiencing, somatic work is another methodology. This is one of the things that I use. Trauma sensitive yoga therapy is another method because again, it brings your body on board. It gets you to develop that internal awareness. What am I feeling right now? And the ability to trust that feeling and then make a healthy choice, take healthy action on that choice. It also helps you stop being reactionary to what's happening out here. You might have toxic family. You might have a toxic ex that you have to communicate with. You have things in your environment that are triggers. When you have complex trauma, it's like you're a raw nerve. You're really sensitive to these things and they can really throw you off balance easily. When you develop this internal awareness and this internal strength, it's not that you're avoiding like what you're doing in reasons 1 and 2. It's that you're allowing yourself to feel the feeling without avoiding and then without letting it take you into the grave, without letting it knock you down and keeping you there, without you making up a meaning that's going to last forever. So using some type of body informed, trauma informed healing, if you know that you have some type of trauma in your background and you continue to attract unhealthy, abusive relationships, is going to be key. So quickly recap the 3 things you are doing right now or have been doing in the past that are keeping you stuck in emotionally unavailable partners or stuck in isolation and loneliness when ultimately you really want to be in a better place emotionally and you want to have a healthy relationship. So the number one thing is you're staying too busy. You're avoiding your feelings. You're overworking because you have a negative subconscious belief because you have past trauma. Busyness is a trauma response, right? And it's also keeping you emotionally unavailable. Number two, you are living in someday. You are minimizing. It's not that bad. You might still be sleeping with someone that you know isn't right for you or that doesn't want anything serious, but you're telling yourself it's not that bad. Whatever the case may be, you are minimizing. If you minimized and justified away red flags in relationships, you will minimize and justify away the true emotional pain of what you're living in order to survive. Living in someday also means because you're not fully facing reality of the way that you're living and the choices that you're making, that you still essentially are emotionally unavailable. The third thing that you might be doing is not investing in some type of professional healing. Or you maybe went to your job, your work, your place of employment, you looked at your insurance, you said, okay, who's the counselor that I can see? And you just went with anybody. And you didn't even know that you had complex trauma. And you're like, I'm going to talk to a counselor is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? If you ask like somebody at the grocery store, yeah, they're probably going to say, yeah, you should probably go talk to somebody. But what we know now through research is that if you have complex trauma, talking about it does not heal it. Talking about it will make you feel better in the moment. You'll feel like you're getting validated. You feel like you're getting understood. You feel like you won't be bending your family, your friend's ear for the 40th time and they're getting tired of hearing, but you won't really be taking that with you because talking about it doesn't change the subconscious beliefs. Talking about it usually just reinforces the emotional response and the emotional conditioning that you have. So to heal past hurt and past pain from complex trauma and narcissistic abuse, you need to be using a trauma informed method. Somatic work, EMDR, trauma sensitive yoga therapy. There are a few other things. They're all body oriented. You need to be doing a method that is specifically proven effective for complex trauma. And that will help take the work with you into your relationships and help you embody that new identity, help you embody the work so that instead of being emotionally unavailable, you are now very emotionally available. And when you're emotionally available and not drained and not living the majority of your life exhausted or emotionally exhausted or anxious or worried, you are a match. You're a match for someone who's also emotionally available and who's also the things that you want, right? If you want love, really amazing love, you can't be in fear. You can't be in something's wrong with me. You can't be living in shame. You can't be worrying about it or telling yourself you're too old or whatever the case may be. You have to be loved. There's no other way to put it. So those are the three things that you might be doing that are holding you back from an emotionally available partner. If you have questions, again, drop them in the comment box. If you want help stopping your own emotional unavailability pattern, if you want getting from stuck in the mud over here, it's been a year or so since I've left my ex, but I'm still super stuck. I can't get over it. I'm dreading every single day. And you want to get to a point where you're the most confident, badass version you've ever been in your entire life and attracting an amazing partner when you're ready, then feel free to book a call. We ask that you be single, meaning you're not sleeping with someone that you're not really sure about yet, or you're not still sleeping with an ex. You're really done with everything. You're really ready to do the inner work. You're professional. You've invested in talk therapy. It got you a little bit down the healing path, but not all the way. You maybe plateaued. Maybe you didn't like your therapist, whatever. And you need to be generally successful and professional in other areas of your life. We want you to have stability in your life because working on yourself and relationship building requires that you be stable. You can't be living in survival mode, worrying about where your next meal is going to come from. You really need to be stable and generally successful in other areas of your life. So if that's you, then book a call. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk. We'll have an honest conversation about where you are, where you want to be. If we can help you, we will talk about that. If we can't help you, we will give you the very best resources, referral, next step, whatever, to get you started on your healing path. So I'll drop the link below. It's bethanydotson.com/talk. And I will see you next week. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I've helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.